Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Hope you're doing well. So the next 2 weeks are going to be critical for the silver market and the precious metals. We'll get into the charts today in this live stream. We'll get into some of the fundamentals, some breaking news from around the world also that could have a big impact on the price of silver. Now, just to get started, it's 6:01 p.m. Eastern time right now, so overnight trading just began, and it's a pretty good sign that we are seeing the silver market in the green following this breakout, which we witnessed on Friday. So on Friday, we talked about the potential that this could be an inverse head and shoulders bottom. Here's a different chart interpretation, that this is a symmetrical triangle. It doesn't really matter which you pick, because either way, the breakout on Friday was a very bullish sign, and it's looking, based on preliminary trading here, that this is going to carry through to the next week. Now, stick around, because we have got a lot to cover in today's live stream, why the next 2 weeks are going to be so critical, and what is happening in the silver market around the world. We're going to get into all of that and some more in-depth analysis of this chart in just a moment, so stick around to the other side of this. But if you're curious as to how you might sign up to win some free gold and silver, well, just silver in this case actually, check this out.
For the first time ever, SD Bullion is giving away 2 monster boxes of silver coins, but not just any silver. Learn more today at sdbullion.com/sweepstakes.
So you can check out SD Bullion with the link down in the description. That's where I buy my gold and silver. Now let's just talk a little bit more about this. This is the 4-hour chart. So we got this breakout here on Friday. This is the consolidation, this triangle that took place following the big smackdown, right? At the end of January, the huge, crushing sell-off where we saw silver down something like, 35% in one day at the lows of that day, almost an unheard of smackdown. Silver's been trending sideways, consolidating. It went as low as $64, but now we're back up to 85, right? Now, one thing I will say is expect more volatility moving forward, but if we just take a look at this on a daily chart, I want to point out a few things. So one, looks just as bullish on the one-day chart, if not more so, because you can see that this is part of an ongoing uptrend, which is still in effect, right? We put the 200-day moving average. Look at that. We're still well above the 200-day moving average. The slope of the 200-day moving average continues to be upward, indicating that silver is in a bull market, which continues to this day, despite the correction that we got at the end of January. Now, to flip back and forth, sorry to do that to you, but I wanted to point out that we got this bullish MACD cross back here, right? Now, this is the 4-hour chart, and this is where you have the signal line getting crossed over by the blue MACD line there, right? This histogram, these little bars here, flipped green. Now, that was very bullish. We covered that at the time. And on the 4-hour, I consider that bullish MACD cross to be sort of a leading indicator, right? Not so much a lagging one. But then if you flip it to the 1-day, you'll see that we're about to get another bullish MACD cross, this time on the 1-day. So that follows a breakout here. Once that occurs, and assuming we have a nice up day on Monday, it might very well happen tomorrow, then that's going to confirm the breakout, right? Also notice that the RSI, which back at the lows, or rather the highs of January when silver was up over $121, had gotten into extremely overbought territory. It was up around 83. The RSI being a measure of how overbought or oversold something is, it's kind of ripe for a correction. Well, that's completely been negated. Right now, the RSI at about 52. So lots of room to run to the upside here. The other indicator I want to put up is accumulation distribution. Notice that this accumulation distribution, actually, it's better to look at this on the 4-hour chart because I don't trust the volume data from the 1-day chart. But notice that this is actually ticking higher now, and that's a very bullish sign, right? So even throughout this correction, accumulation distribution remained high. What that indicates is that longs were not divesting themselves of their positions. In fact, they were continuing to accumulate more. So what has happened is we've had the weak hands, the leveraged players all shaken out. Now we're ready for a much more sustainable run to new highs, probably going to be back above $100 sometime in March. Could be a lot higher than that. Of course, that's just my forecast. Take it all with a grain of salt, right? Not financial advice. But let's get into some of the news. And I see a few people even already mentioning it here. Mexican silver supply about to get volatile before nationalization. Yeah, in the chat there. Well, I don't know if they're going to nationalize things, but in Mexico right now, there's a lot of instability brewing, right? This is just breaking news. This is from earlier today. Top cartel leader killed during a raid carried out by Mexican authorities in the western state of Jalisco, fueling violent clashes across the country, but winning praise from the U.S. Okay, now why is that important for silver? Well, silver is, Mexico is the world's biggest silver producer, right? This is from Statista, data from 2023, but nothing has changed since then except, it's still set up this way. Mexico, number one, China, number two, Peru, number three, right? That's still the way things shake out. And this unrest or instability, which is now brewing in Mexico. I mean, you can see this is Puerto Vallarta. It's one of the most popular tourist destinations in Mexico. This is from a X account, Zantali. But there's all this footage going around on X of all the chaos being wrought by the cartel following the killing of their high-ranking leader. And yeah, I mean, any instability in the world's largest silver producer, it's just one more factor which supports the thesis of higher silver prices moving forward, right? Disruption to the silver supply. Well, we all know how that works, right? Supply and demand. There's already huge structural deficits across the physical silver market. There have been for years, hundreds of millions of ounces being consumed that are not being replaced by mining. Well, now this is what it looks like in the country that produces more silver than anywhere else in the world. So no immediate threats to, the mines as far as I know, but still it gives you, pause. There was also that story from earlier this month that I haven't really delved into too much in depth, but there was a silver producer where some of the workers, I believe, were abducted by a cartel. I think it was Vizsla Silver. So, it could be disruptive to silver supplies. I mean, hopefully not. I hope for the sake of everybody who's in Mexico, who's visiting Mexico, who's traveling through Mexico, who lives in Mexico, that things there settle down, and return to a state of normalcy. But nonetheless, this could have a big impact considering that this is the country that makes more silver than anywhere else. Now, there's a lot more going on. And now look at silver, by the way. It's up 1.44% in overnight trading. So already a very strong start to the session here. And I suspect tomorrow it's going to be moving even more. But there's a lot more going on in the silver market in the coming 2 weeks than just what is happening in Mexico right now, although that is not insignificant, right? We've also got China about to reopen their silver trading. So it has been closed for the Lunar New Year. I believe that's the holiday, the Spring Festival, as they call it here on the Shanghai Futures Exchange website. So Shanghai Futures Exchange was closed from the 15th through the 23rd. So it's closed through Monday, so not going to be open tomorrow, but then it's reopening for business as usual on Tuesday, February 24th, and that could really bring a strong bid into the market. It'll be interesting to see what happens on the Shanghai Gold Exchange when silver trading reopens after being down for a whole week. As we saw back in December and into January, one of the factors that preceded silver's precipitous rise higher was that premiums on silver at the Shanghai Gold Exchange were absolutely soaring compared to Western markets. So it's an interesting dynamic. And again, this week could be a big one for silver. I had speculated in a live stream last week that if we were going to see a smackdown in silver, it was going to take place in the week that we just had, right? The preceding week to now when this was closed. And we did, in fact, see a bit of a drawdown in the silver price. The lows were hit on Tuesday when silver dipped down to around 71 and change. But, we finished the week pretty strong. Finished the week, at over $80. And now we're up to almost 86 if you look at what's happening here in overnight trading. I want to look at gold too. So gold also recently broke out from this triangle, right? And this is a very bullish setup for gold. We've got a similar story. We got a bullish MACD cross here. We've got accumulation moving up. If we switch this to a daily chart, it looks like we're about to get that same bullish MACD cross. The histogram is going to flip green, and that usually precedes moves higher. Same story as in silver, where we've got the RSI had gotten up to 88 in gold when it was up around 5,600. I mean, that's extremely overbought. That is like you're waiting for a massive correction. And we did get one. We got gold running from a high of 5,598 to a low on the dip of 4,402. So a big smackdown, then a nice consolidation. But, look, zooming out, this is what gold has been doing for over a year. It consolidates, it breaks higher, it consolidates, it breaks higher. Now look, we're consolidating. A big consolidation with a big correction could mean that we get a big breakout here, taking us to new record all-time highs above $5,600 in the relatively near future. The technicals certainly look good. Also notable, if you switch this to a weekly chart, kind of get rid of some of the noise, you'll notice that on Friday, so that's this candle right here, because this is this week's new candle that just started, but we had the highest weekly gold close on record just this past Friday. It closed at 5108. That was the highest gold had ever closed for a week. And you know what? This week, the way things are shaping up, we're probably going to put in a new record weekly candle by Friday, right? Because, we're silver and gold. Where silver goes, gold's going to go too. I just suspect silver, as has been the overall trend, right, in this bull market, is that it's going to outperform gold to the upside. Now, we've got, in addition to the Shanghai Gold Exchange reopening, right, civil disorder in Mexico related to a battle between the cartels and the government. We've also got a very interesting setup here at the COMEX, and we've been talking about this for a while. Now, I haven't really taken a stance on this. It seems like a lot of the folks who follow the silver market feel very strongly about this one way or the other, but this is the silver futures volume and open interest. I just think it's something interesting that we really need to keep an eye on here. And the open interest here for silver for March contracts is down to 44,542, okay? It was up over 100,000 about a month ago. But that's still a lot of contracts. And the reason this is so important is because March is a big delivery month. And usually what ends up happening is you'll see the open interest draw down as the date approaches, and it gets rolled over into a future month, which in this case would be May, right? So we have seen a shrinking of the open interest for March, an increase in the open interest for May, which is now over 56,000 contracts. But this is still a very large number, and the first day for delivery is this week for March physical delivery. Now, each one of these contracts is worth 5,000 ounces of silver. So at 44,542, you're still talking an open interest that represents over 222 million ounces of silver. Now, why is that such an important number? Well, this is the most recent report from the COMEX, the silver stocks report. So this is from, the report was issued February 20th. And you'll notice that the registered silver, which is the amount of silver that they actually have, like that's ready to go, ready to be delivered for any investor who is long on a silver contract and wants to stand for delivery, they've got about 88.1 million ounces of silver. Now, one thing you'll notice is that has been shrinking, right? Because a month ago, that was up over 100 million. The total, which is the eligible and registered. So a quick recap. Registered is silver that's in their warehouses that can be given for delivery. It's ready to go. Eligible is silver that's in their warehouses, but that someone has a claim to, right? Like an ETF, family office, some investor, right? Maybe a physical producer. Somebody has got a claim to those, an industrial user rather. Somebody has got a claim to those eligible ounces. So even though they're there, it doesn't mean they're ready for delivery. But if we're talking about March open interest still representing 222 million, that means that if less than half stand for delivery, then they're going to be out of registered silver. They're not going to have enough silver. They'll have to use, they have what's called like a force majeure in their rules. They can declare that. They can say, this is out of our hands. The whole thing's not going to collapse, right? But what they'll do is they'll force settlement in fiat currency if such a scenario plays out. Now, it's still a relatively low probability event. The vast majority of contracts on the COMEX typically end up settled for fiat currency, not standing for delivery. But one thing that we have seen is that every month for the past 2 years, it's like there's more contract holders standing for delivery than the previous year over year, right, for that month. So like January 2025, more contract holders stood for delivery than January 2024. And that has been the trend across all months. And if that is continuing this year, then you could see a big portion of this these holders stand for delivery. Even if it doesn't completely drain the COMEX, then you're just kicking the can down the road to May, right? If we keep seeing the total registered silver declining, then that could be a real problem for the silver market. What ends up happening is, let's say they do have to invoke force majeure, let's say they do have to settle everything in paper fiat, that's going to mean that the physical silver that you are holding is likely going to be significantly more valuable, because if it turns out that you can't get physical silver on the COMEX anymore, then retail investors who hold physical metal, like AKA stackers, are going to be finding themselves in a very good position because they're going to have something that everyone's going to want to get their hands on, right? Not financial advice, just kind of giving you my analysis of the situation. This could turn out very favorably for stackers who are actually holding physical metal. Just my thoughts. And this is definitely something that you want to keep an eye on. Another factor which is going to be playing out over the coming 2 weeks is the situation in Iran. So WTI crude, this is like U.S. oil prices, also a very interesting setup. If we switch this to a day, you can see that this broke out from this consolidation back on Thursday. I believe that was with the publishing of that Axios piece regarding the potential for a U.S. war on Iran. Iran partially shutting down the Strait of Hormuz last week as part of a military drill. So there's a lot of concerns that there will be a disruption to global oil supplies. Now it's kind of, trending sideways right now because nobody knows for sure what is going to be happening with Iran. But the next 2 weeks, again, is going to be very critical. This was a deadline that was set on Thursday of last week. Here in this piece from Times of Israel, Trump warns Iran of bad things if no deal made, sets a deadline of 10 to 15 days. U.S. President Donald Trump warned Iran on Thursday that it must reach a deal over its nuclear program or quote-unquote bad things will happen, and appeared to set a 10 to 15-day deadline before the U.S. might take action. So they're, got the huge military buildup, the biggest since Operation Iraqi Freedom, and they've got 2 aircraft carriers, a huge portion of the U.S. Air Force restaged to the Middle East, F-35s, F-22s, I'm sure they got some B-2 bombers. They've got refueling aircraft. So if this is all a negotiating tactic, first of all, it's a very expensive one, costing hundreds of millions, I'm sure, if not billions of dollars to stage the huge military presence that we've got there. But, when it comes to Trump setting deadlines, I think that he does actually, mean something with this deadline. Now, as mercurial and, impulsive an individual as he may be, nonetheless, when he says you have a 10 to 15 day deadline, there is a real possibility that he may act on that. So if he put that into effect on Thursday, that 10 to 15 day deadline would be falling somewhere between next weekend and the weekend following that. So assuming that, this is likely going to kick off, if it does, over a weekend. Could be as early as next weekend. The tail end of that deadline would be the weekend following that. So again, the next 2 weeks going to be very important for what happens. There are some signs too, I think. Now, nobody knows for sure, but the huge military buildup is one thing. Also, we're getting U.S. soldiers relocated. This is a recent report. U.S. soldiers relocated from Qatar military base as Trump ally tells him to pull the trigger on Iran. So that was Lindsey Graham, the perpetual war hawk, the war pig, basically, Lindsey Graham, constantly agitating for these foreign interventions and foreign wars. But Trump's got this guy whispering in his ear, saying, not whispering, shouting from, pulpit, that we need strikes in Iran. The fact that the U.S. is relocating troops, as we did from Syria, this is from 4 days ago, U.S. to withdraw troops from Syria as tensions mount with Iran, trying to get these U.S. forces out of harm's way for a potential Iranian retaliation. These all, to me, suggest that there is likely going to be some conflict in Iran. Now, how big will that be? Will it be limited strikes? Will it be a full-out, weeks-long war? That was sort of what that piece in Axios suggested. Who knows, right? But if it does play out, expect to see the price of oil, first of all, shoot up higher, and also safe haven assets like gold and silver. Now we're looking at silver right now over $86, $86.25. So this breakout is not something you want to ignore, right? The breakout from Friday, it's a very bullish technical sign. Certainly the fundamentals are aligning themselves for higher silver prices here, higher gold prices. Gold just had a record high weekly close. Gold is breaking out. The miners also, by the way, right? Here's the junior silver miner ETF, SILJ. It just broke out from a consolidation pattern. Kind of the same story as the metals. You've been seeing consolidation, breakout, consolidation, breakout, consolidation, breakout. The SILJ is not far off from putting in record all-time highs, right? It closed on Friday at 36.14, record all-time intraday high, 41.10. So much closer to its record all-time high than silver is. Silver, has a long way to go before it puts in a record high. It was up over 121 in January, right now around 86, but the SILJ just needs a little bump to get it to a record all-time high. So the miners are doing very well here. You can see kind of a similar thing in the GDX. We had a breakout there. All right, however you want to draw this. I'm just doing this in real time, so it might be a little sloppy, but the point is this is definitely a breakout too, right? So GDX breaking out, that's the senior gold miner ETF. You got silver breaking out. Let's look at the other metals. I think palladium breaking out to the upside. Platinum breaking out to the upside. So the whole precious metals complex here looking pretty good. And again, the fundamentals, you've got instability in the world's largest silver producer. You've got a major conflict brewing in the Middle East. You have got, at the very least, that situation in the Middle East costing billions of dollars, right, to deploy the military that way, contributing to ongoing massive debts and deficits, which, if we do go to war, expect those to balloon, right? So debasement. So it's not just safe haven, but you've got these things affecting the metals from multiple standpoints. In the terms of silver, it's a critical resource, right? So the more deglobalization that we see, the more breakdown of international ties, the more nation states, industrial producers are going to want to lock down their supplies of this when they look at what's happening in Mexico. I'm sure that, the Teslas, the Apples, the Samsungs of the world that need silver to make their products, they're thinking we better lock down a supply of this stuff. And so it might sound crazy, but silver at $86, still cheap, right? Pretty incredible. I mean, if I had said that a year ago, the price of silver was under $50 and, everybody was incredulous that, it would even break that. Well, now we're at $86, but it's still looking cheap by most measures. And right now it's up over 2% in overnight trading. Tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day. So, keep an eye on all of these factors. Do me a favor. Someone in the chat so I'll ask you for that favor in just a moment, which is just subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. Yeah, someone mentioned the DXY. I hadn't even looked at it, but yeah, it looks like the DXY is in the red, and that is an ominous sign for the dollar. This is the DXY, a measure of the dollar against a basket of foreign currencies. I've kind of got the technical picture here spelled out for you. You've got this looks like a corrective consolidation in a downtrend, so keep an eye out for a break below this orange line. Of course, falling dollar means that when you're talking about the price of gold and silver in dollars, it's likely going to be higher. And if we zoom this out, you can see this is a monthly chart of the DXY. We just broke below critical support that goes back more than a decade, and it looks like what we're getting now following that breakdown, you can see we're below the 200-day moving average, this blue line, so we're in a downtrend. And it looks to me like we're kind of retesting this breakdown level. We've got a little bear flag going here, and then what you would expect to see here, especially, you know, given the fact that we are in this environment of rising debts and deficits and dollar debasement, de-dollarization globally, what you would expect to see is once you get a breakdown below this line, a sharp drop, right? And that could mean a sharp increase in the dollar-denominated price of the precious metal. So all of these factors, things to keep an eye on. But thank you very much for joining me on the live stream today. By the way, I adjusted some settings on my live stream. I'm hoping this is coming through at like a higher resolution for you. I'm not much of a technical guy, but someone had put it in the comments in a recent live stream that they were hoping that I could transmit these charts a little more clearly. Now, you know, this isn't exactly a channel people tune into for the production quality, I don't think. But hopefully at least things are a little more clear for you. If they are, leave me a comment down below and let me know how things look. But anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe, happy stacking. Do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, follow me on X at x.com/stacksmarter. Just hit over 10,000 followers over there, so I greatly appreciate everybody who has done that. And keep an eye on all these stories. You know, subscribe to the channel because 2026 is going to be a very interesting year for the metals, and I'm going to do my best to keep you updated on all of this. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe and happy stacking, and I